Good evening, guys. This is Grant from the Brutally Delicious podcast. And as part of our mental health segments tonight, I'm talking with Nick Oliver from the UK-based band ruled by Raptors. Not just UK-based, he's also locally based to me. So we've got a little bit of Northeast UK lads on show here. Start the way we normally do. Nick, tell us what you've got going on musically before we get stuck into the dirty stuff, mate.
Well, first things first, just want to say thank you very much for having us on. It really means a lot. It's good to see and good to hear that we're chatting about mental health and music, because mental health's a big, important thing in the world right now. So it's good to talk about this stuff. Right now, I've made sure to make a note of this because I'm terrible at remembering things. The next thing that's coming up musically for us, we are playing a gig at Xerox in Newcastle on March 1st. We'll be supporting the opponent with the amazing Tide of Fighting. Straight for tomorrow, and most likely I'm also going to be there, so it's going to be one hell of a show. If you can get along, it's all over our Facebook, it's all over all the other bands' Facebooks as well, so and all of our other social medias, apart from X, we don't use that one. But it'll be posted plenty of times on there for gig prices and time slots and stuff as well. So hopefully anybody who's listening wants to come on down and enjoy yourself for a good night.
Awesome stuff. Any links like that will be included in our descriptions and all that kind of stuff. But this is mental health and heavy music. I know a little bit about you, Nick, just from the little chat that we had before this. So I think the bit where you said that you were forgetful might be good vault and point. You mentioned some of your neurodivergence and your mental
Yeah,
health in
man.
our discussion, and that forgetful, chaotic nature is something that I definitely share with you. So how about we vault off from here into mental health and music? Where do you want to start, dude?
Yeah, man. Well, for me, man, it's a bit of a complicated one because I can't really speak for the sort of writing lyrics and stuff like that for this sort of stuff. But for me, mental health is a big part of my life. Inevitably, as a person who, if you don't know who I am, if you don't know much about me, but I suffer with Asperger's and ADHD. Sorry, Asperger's isn't the correct term anymore, is it? It is autism spectrum disorder. That was the diagnosis I got. So showed me age a little bit there. Um, for me, I end up tangenting a lot, so it seems I feel myself being very forgetful with what I'm doing. So it's for me, music is about catharsis, and it's where I let the energy go in a sense, because you inevitably feel yourself sporadic around where you're talking, and you can tell by the way I talk. I'm one topic, another topic, next topic, that go. But because in performance, you are forced to focus on what you're doing, and it's such a relief to not be all over the place for change. It means that you're very directed. You know what you're doing. You know what you've got to do. I mean, I'm not the lead singer, so as you know yourself, being a singer previously, you tend to take control over when the song's going to start. You've got a half an hour set. Well, the singer's going to make sure that you're bang on half an hour, or you'll go on a tangent.
A little bit of
Six
a
and one
difference
passes
there,
another.
actually, between us. I wasn't just a vocalist; I was a bass
Yeah.
player as well. But I think you were
Oh,
talking
wow.
about like focus on stage and what have you. And it's where me and you would probably differ a little bit because this isn't a talk about me. But when I was performing, I was pure chaos. Like I was bouncing off the walls, I was diving into
Yeah.
the crowd, regardless of whether it was when I was doing bass or vocals or both. I always I went the opposite way with things. It wasn't a case of focusing on one thing. It was like being able to pay attention to everything all at once was my absolute dream. How do you
Oh,
find
man.
that kind of you when you mention neurodivergence in relation to Asperger's and ADHD there? I won't begrudge you using the term Asperger's, you know what I mean, because it does relate to a very specific set of symptoms within autistic spectrum disorder, and I think sometimes understanding those
Yeah.
symptoms is better. How do you find ADHD and autism affect your writing?
For me, it actually comes out a little bit in our music for us as a band in general, because would as inevitably the core of what you find with a lot of musicians, especially if you are on the spectrum in some way, whether that be Asperger's or sorry, autism or ADHD, you find yourself that you're drawn together with people who have a similar mentality, at least, whether or not they're necessarily ADHD or have autism. You find yourself drawn to them. these people like who have the similar sort of mentality and wavelengths, so to speak, and can adapt to you. So we end up being quite in writing. If you listen to some of our after stuff, it is a little bit chaotic, and that's where we thrive. We thrive in that chaos environment of like, something that's not on like a standard 4/4 beat all the time. We'll chop and change between different time signatures, give that sort of interesting vibe and flow to the music. Because you know, as much as it's fun to have like a good rock beat, you want to have a little bit of fun with it as well. You want to get that big energy and make people go, oh, what was that? That was weird. And even just doing it once or twice and then letting them think, is it going to happen? Oh, it did happen. Oh, it happened different that time. Which that's where we thrive in that environment.
Do you find that abstraction soothing as well? Do you take something from it, like personally and emotionally, the fact that you can throw these curveballs at your listeners?
Yeah, 100%. Because I find myself, if I'm playing the same thing over and over again in like bass line, I get myself a little bit bored. I'm sitting there like, yeah, sure, I can play it. Like we've all learned "Smells Like Teen Spirit." Inevitably, we've all learned it wrong. You find yourself just playing those four notes for the whole track, which it's a great way to write. But when you're writing something for yourself to get out there, you want to change it. You want to play something a little bit different. You want to make people. Sometimes it gives that feeling of discomfort, which is good because you want someone. You want if somebody feels discomfort, they're feeling something in your music, which I think is what we need right now. You need to have that moment of what's going on and actually listen, have a active listening as opposed to passively listening to music, which is what we hopefully strive towards.
I absolutely love that, dude. That little quote about at least they're feeling something. That's something that I'm going to boil down into a short to advertise this interview because that's beautiful, and we share a lot of common ground in that view. I very much respect the fact that you're putting artist first at the forefront of what you put out.
Yeah.
With that in mind, do you ever consider your listener, or is it a straight up case of we're writing this because this is what we want?
Well, I always find that if you write something that you're gonna like, inevitably people are gonna somebody else is gonna latch onto it and say, I like that. Which that's where well, that's basically what we've done for our entire thing. Because I'm not gonna lie, I've been in pop punk bands and played like stuff that I'm thinking like, oh yeah, people are gonna love this. Like, I'm not gonna lie to you, my band used to cover Poker Face for a long time, which it's a good song. People get up and dance to it and stuff like that. It's good fun. But when you boil it down, you play that sort of stuff anytime, but it gets dull, repetitive. Whereas if you write something that you want to listen to, people will gravitate towards it. I suppose it's that sort of thing. You spread the flowers, people will come. And it's what that's what we've focused on. Sure, you try not to be massively abstract and out there. You don't want to alienate people. But as much as we are like forward focused for like what we like, inevitably people people feel something with it and they like it, they enjoy it. I mean, we've been lucky enough to tour up and down the country, and every time we come up, we've come away with somebody saying, "I want to listen to that." I guess it's approachable in some sense, at the very least.
Now that's quite a nice lead out there as well, dude. Because the last interview I did on this topic, Turin became a very big factor in the
Mhm.
interview. The lad that I was interviewing had basically said that Turin had like driven him off the edge, so to speak, without going into the details and hijacking it. Have you
Yeah.
found that like any sort of Turin lifestyle, kind of being locked in vans, locked in hotel rooms, those kind of negatives that come with Turin, do you find that they affect you at all?
And you know what? It's a bit of it'll be a bit of a strange one. This one. I'm not gonna. I'll be completely transparent. Maybe it's this worth putting a little bit of a trigger warning here because um, I don't want to make anybody feel uncomfortable as much as like I like to new music to feel something. I don't want people to feel uncomfortable. But personally, I have gone through an experience of suicide. Luckily, I wasn't at the edge of I managed to pull myself from the precipice. I'm very lucky that I've got supportive family and friends, especially my partner. She's exceptionally supportive, and obviously she's got a little girl as well, who's this closest thing to stepdaughter I could ever ask for, and they helped. That was the main things that pulled me from that precipice. And not long after I had my initial attempt in 2022, we actually went on tour as part of a backing band for a fella from America called MC Lars. We've done a couple of tours with him in the past, and he took us out again in 2022. Basically, first thing after like everything had come back to normal after COVID, and being on tour sort of gave me that opportunity to face what it was that had happened, um, and it gave us an outlet. For a moment, I could sort of be like, I didn't have to think about it while I was on stage because I could be feeding off the audience. And I mean, you talk about like jumping at the crowd and stuff like that. I mean, that is entirely mine and the guitarist in our band, Matthew's vibe. We throw ourselves around like lunatics, but it's that moment for me, and I'm so focused on what I'm doing, I could be anywhere in the crowd, and those times being able to feed off that the energy of the audience really gave us solace. And I mean, inevitably, our songs are very emotionally driven, a lot of them as well. So being able to hear our lyrics from our singer, because inevitably you end up listening out, and it means a lot to me. Those lyrics, which I find is important to find some meaning, even in what somebody else has wrote.
What you've just said is beautifully poignant. I want you applaud you for opening that the way that you did, and just assure you that I've stared into that same darkness as well, mate. I think it's important that any of us that have faced that kind of stuff do so in an open environment. I want to thank you for sharing that first and foremost. Um, I kind of lost my train of thought a little bit there. I did have another question that I was going to fire back at you. Yeah, that was it. You'd mentioned about the release on stage and that kind of thing, and I think that's a very important thing for anybody that listens to this is understanding that what we do as musicians, because musicians, vocalists, anybody that's involved in the arts is a catharsis for us, and it helps us steer away from these dark thoughts, and generally kind of try and get a little bit more positivity into our lives. What would you kind of say to the gatekeepery kind of critical community within metal? Metal can be quite elitist. You get a lot of people that is very, very critical across genres and that kind of stuff. What would your message be to people that are like, oh, they're shit, they're shit, they're shit, to kind of tell them to stop being so crap?
To be honest, that mentality has never made sense to me. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. I grew up with like in that. For me, my family's sorry. I grew up with a lot of thrash metal in my life. I've never seen Metallica in their prime. I've listened to Metallica's prime, but I've never seen Metallica in their prime. But this mentality of like metal elitism doesn't make any sense to me because at the end of the day, music is music. If somebody finds an enjoyment from that, that's what matters. Sure, you might not be into it. There's certain genres of music I'm not into. That's sometimes you just need to, for lack of a better way of putting it, just grow up. Because at the end of the day, having that mentality is so negative. And right now in the world, we've got so many negative things happening right now. A little bit of positivity and being able, and someone saying like, you know what, I really like this band. For example, I'll take myself as an example. Obviously, growing up, it's a bit of a background for me. My first ever gig I went to was Megadeth, so pretty metal at the time. But I was a big fan when I was growing up of Linkin Park, and there was a lot of metal elites out there being like, "That's not metal. That's not metal." It's like, well, it's heavy. It's got angry, shouty music in it. It makes me feel something, and that's what matters. Because at the end of the day, a lot of people in this world will turn around and say like, "Oh, metal is of the devil" or whatever, which we've all seen that bullshit, and we've dealt with it. We've all dealt with it in our own different ways, and the least we can do is for each other is to be like, you like music that makes you go, I'm angry. Good. That can we can find common ground in that. Because inevitably, the people who are into like these new metal bands and stuff like that don't have the same mentality. They say like thrash metal isn't thrash metal, but these metal elitists do have that mentality. And yeah, I would just say, grow up, move on with your life.
Yeah, man. Anybody listening out there that's like that, be fucking nice to each other. You know what I mean? Put your arm around somebody, regardless of whether they're a punk or whether they're a black metal fan or a fucking new metal fan. Linkin Park was an interesting one there because obviously the case of what happened to Chester Bennington is somewhat tragic. Yeah, do you think there should be more support for musicians out there that are perhaps writing a little bit too much from the heart? You know what I mean? You listen back to stuff that Linkin Park did, and you can clearly hear Bennington screaming for help. Um, you know,
I think it's a really tough one, that one, because we like now obviously you look back on it and you have that hindsight of like, wow, this was how he was feeling. It's so hard to see that from somebody else's perspective. Sorry, from like, for example, if you were in that band, would you do you think you would know that if he was feeling that way? You'd like to think that you would, because you'd like to think that you know somebody well enough to be able to speak to them and ask how they're doing. And it's I think the main thing that you need to do if you're in a band where you're like, I mean, that's something that we do as a band. Is like we always make sure to like message each other and we try to make it like a brotherhood in a sense. I mean, personally, I'm an only child, and I believe strangely Matt as well is also an only child, and the other two have siblings. Oh, a drummer and singer. But I don't have any brothers or anything like that. But a band, you spend so much time with them that it's not just a friendship. It is like a brotherhood. And if your brother was like writing anything about a new journal or something about like what's happening in the world right now, how they're feeling in their head, you'd like to think that you would ask your brother, "Hey man, you all right? You want to
yeah.
talk?" You'd take a couple of moments to spend some time with them. That's the main thing you need to do is just communication, and speaking to people. I mean, the main thing that helped me through my dark patches was friends and family just giving that sort of like, "Hey man, you all right? You want to go out for a walk? Want to go for a beer? Whatever. Go for a chat. Call for a chat. Whatever." Or like jumping during COVID times, it was jumping on a Zoom call or jumping on a Discord call and just playing some games and chatting bollocks, really. um, Doing that is what saves people's lives. I mean, there's the famous story of Fides member who unfortunately killed, committed suicide. Called one of the other members, and he didn't answer the phone, and he never forgave himself for it. Which you never want to put yourself in that position. So the main thing is just to try and communicate, to try and make sure that door is always going to be open for your friends, especially if there's any sort of concern for them. So that would be my message: is always just reach out to somebody if you're feeling that like that.
Absolutely wonderful, dude. We're kicking on for about 25 minutes here, so I think I'll start tying it up.
Mhm.
Um, I always try and end this exactly the same way because I think the message is always important. You've kind of already touched on it a little bit with your last answer there, to be honest with you. If there's anybody listening to this that's staring into the kind of darkness that you've stared into, what would your advice be to them?
Reach out, speak to somebody. I'd like to say that I'd be able to like take the message on and message back to you, but I'm a very private person, so I mean, Facebook's all closed off. But you always have somebody to reach out to, whether that be reaching out to a friend, family member, or some stranger on the street, or even the mental health services that we'll have there. Because as much as like right now things are low funded right now for the NHS, they do have people who can talk to you about this, and that is what matters right now: is reaching out to somebody. You never suffer in silence. If you feel any sort of depression, dark thoughts, anything like that, speak to somebody. That's what's important right now, because in this world right now there's a lot of evil, and it's a very scary situation, especially with everything that's happening with people who are in charge of the country and who might be behind the scenes in charge of the country. It's quite scary. Right now, what we need to do is get together, find community in each other, and just love each other, in a sense, which is what's important right now.
Absolutely beautiful way to end it. Nick, thank you very much for this discussion tonight. It's been absolutely beautiful, mate, and the best of luck on everything that is going on with Ruled by Raptors. Thank you to anybody else that listened to this or watched it, if you're watching on YouTube. This is Grant from the Brutally Delicious podcast. For all the metalheads out there and anybody else, you're not alone. Reach out. Night night.